In our world today, there's this overwhelming feeling, isn't there, that you have to be constantly visible.
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere you look.
Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere. This pressure to share every single meal on social media or, broadcast every thought, every little win, every plan you have.
It's relentless.
It is this demand to just be seen, be loud, constantly announce you're here. And it feels like we've all sort of bought into this idea that visibility, that equals power, more exposure, more influence.
That's the prevailing wisdom,
Well,
for
wait, wait,
sure.
what if that whole idea is just completely backward? What if the very thing we're told to do, showing off, loudly advertising your strength, your intentions, what if that's actually the fastest way to lose your power, to make yourself vulnerable?
That's a fascinating question,
Yeah.
and it takes us right into some unexpected territory.
Right. So today we're doing a deep dive into the mind of someone often, well, misunderstood, simplified maybe, Niccolo Machiavelli.
The name itself carries so much weight, often negative weight.
Exactly. But we're not here to just rehash the old ruthless caricature. Instead, we're looking closely at his actual writings, exploring Machiavelli as a really shrewd psychologist, a keen observer of power dynamics.
Yeah, beyond just the politics.
Specifically, his surprisingly counterintuitive take on visibility, on silence, and why, in the grand scheme, showing off might just be the single worst strategic mistake you can make.
It's quite the claim when you put it like that.
Our mission here is to understand Machiavelli's warnings about, let's call it premature exposure, and the underestimated strategic power of restraint. And then, crucially, pull those seemingly ancient lessons right into our hyper-connected, very public, modern lives.
And it's remarkable, isn't it, how insights from, Renaissance Florence can feel so incredibly relevant today. Looking at his work this way, focusing on his observations about human behavior under pressure, competition, the value of control, especially self-control, like restraint and silence. It offers such a powerful counter-narrative to our modern obsession with, loudness and transparency. He wasn't just writing political theory. He was really dissecting the psychology of power. And that dissection, it gives us some pretty potent tools for navigating any competitive space, including our own.
Okay, let's really unpack this. This contrast is fascinating. Just think about the cultural air we breathe every day. You pick up your phone, watch the news, talk to people. The message is constant. Be seen, flaunt your wins, announce your plans, showcase success.
It's the background noise of modern life,
Yeah,
almost.
it really is. This deeply ingrained belief that exposure is power, that the loudest person in the room is the most influential, that just being constantly present online means you're relevant.
We're told to build personal brands, be authentic by sharing, everything. Live out loud.
Right, that's the accepted wisdom. But Machiavelli, watching this incredibly complex, often brutal political game in his time, he came to a totally different conclusion.
A radically different one.
He asks that key question. What if this modern creed, this worship of visibility, what if it's built on a lie? What if the very act of showing off, advertising your strength, your plans, your progress, what if that's not power at all, but actually the fastest path to losing it?
And that's where he goes beyond just political advice. It becomes deep psychological insight. He was, as the material puts it, a quiet observer of power. Not just reading about it, but watching it happen.
In the streets and palaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In Florence, saw rulers rise and fall, alliances shift, betrayals happen. And the theme he kept seeing was that those who display too much too soon become targets.
Yeah, like the peacock you mentioned earlier. Beautiful feathers, but very obvious to predators.
Precisely. His time was one where power could literally mean life or death.
Yeah.
Trust was a rare commodity. Competition was fierce. In that world, silence meant survival. Power wasn't something you put on display. It was, and this is starkly put, a dagger you concealed. You didn't let anyone know you had it until the moment you absolutely needed to use it.
Wow, a concealed dagger.
He saw countless examples. Rulers, ambitious individuals driven by ego, or maybe just a need for recognition, who revealed too much, boasted too loudly, acted too soon based on strength they thought they had, only to be swiftly outmaneuvered. Destroyed, even.
They basically signed their own downfall by seeking that validation, or trying to intimidate too early.
Exactly. So Machiavelli concluded with this, chilling logic that strength that is flaunted becomes weakness. The truly effective person, the one who lasts, who gains real influence, it's rarely the loudest one.
They're watching, calculating, waiting.
Right. while others make that critical mistake of betraying themselves with their need to be admired or maybe just their lack of self-control. And that observation from centuries ago, it just clashes so strongly with our culture today.
And that clash takes us right to how we behave now. We're constantly doing things Machiavelli would probably view with serious alarm,
Things we see as normal, even virtuous.
like sharing these huge, ambitious goals online before we've even poured the foundation, or posting every tiny victory in real time, looking for that immediate thumbs up.
That dopamine hit of validation.
Totally. We reveal strategies, our feelings, intimate details of relationships,
Yeah.
all flying the flag of authenticity.
Yes, and this is where the Machiavellian critique hits hardest. What we celebrate as being authentic or transparent. Machiavelli would probably dissect that and call it, maybe harshly, strategic suicide.
Strategic suicide. Wow, that's a heavy term.
It is, but think about it tactically. That's the world he lived in. He understood that in any competitive field, politics, business, even personal life, the loud become predictable and the predictable become vulnerable.
Makes sense if I know exactly what you're going to do.
I can counter it. If you constantly broadcast your intentions, your resources, how you react emotionally, you're just handing over a roadmap to your weaknesses, how to anticipate you. You lose the element of surprise.
And surprise, the
Right.
unknown. That's a powerful tool.
Huge. It ties right into that famous quote, the material highlights. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are.
Right.
And the reading makes a really crucial point here. This isn't advice on how to look powerful. It's a warning about the danger of just focusing on appearances.
Appearances invite judgment. Exposure invites attack.
Exactly. The more you put out there about yourself, your plans, your position, the easier you make it for others to define you, oppose you, or destroy you based on that very information.
So it's a paradox. In trying to connect or get validation by being visible, you actually make yourself less secure.
Precisely. In the modern court of power, just like back then, mystery is not a flaw. It is armed. It's a strategic asset.
Armed mystery. I like that.
Think about the examples we see all the time that echo this. The entrepreneur who boasts loudly about their amazing new idea before they've locked down patents or market share.
Competitors jump right on it.
Or they sabotage it. Or consider the person in the meeting who just has to dominate, explain every single thought. They might sound confident initially, but they also quietly lose respect. Why? Because they're showing their entire hand. No room for others demonstrates a lack of control.
Versus that quieter person, the one who just moves with clarity. They're not performing.
Not loud, don't need to constantly explain, but their actions when they happen. Decisive, effective. Others adjust to their presence because the moves are deliberate, impactful, not just noise. They become undeniable because their power is shown through results, not announced beforehand.
And at the core of this, the material says, is this fundamental link? Speech is commitment, and commitment too early is limitation.
Yeah, think about that. When you speak, you declare something. You take a position. You draw a line. You're saying, this is where I stand, or this is what I will do.
And if you're showing off, you're not just stating a position, you're explicitly revealing your weapons. Here's how great I am, here's my strategy, watch my next move.
And the consequence, Machiavelli saw, is instant. The moment you do, others begin preparing countermeasures. If they know your route, they build roadblocks, know your strengths, they look for weaknesses, know your goals, they work to undermine them. You've just handed them the intel.
Machiavelli realized real strength wasn't putting on a show. It lies not in being praised, but in being underestimated.
Right. Remember the fox and lion analogy. The fox, often overlooked, survives not by noise, but by concealing its moves. Cunning. Unpredictable.
While the lions.
The lion rules, yes, but not by roaring endlessly. It's the implicit threat of force withheld. You know the power is there, but the uncertainty of when and how it might be used, that's what commands respect, caution.
And it really feels like our modern culture just fundamentally gets this wrong. It confuses noise with dominance.
Absolutely. We've somehow been trained to equate presence with posting, leadership with loudness, power with performance. We see the most visible person, the most vocal, the one performing on the public stage, and we just assume that's where the real power lies.
When Machiavelli suggests that performance itself might be a sign of weakness, a need for validation that actually undermines strength.
Exactly. Which brings us to another really sharp point from the reading. The more you show, the more you owe.
Ah, okay. Explain that one.
Think about personal branding today. You project this image, success, confidence, constant progress. Well, the world begins to expect that from you. You create this public persona.
And that persona has obligations.
Right. People expect you to maintain that level, keep up that image, that momentum. And if you stumble, if you fail to meet those expectations, it doesn't forget.
So every public statement, every brag creates a kind of debt, a social debt.
Precisely. Visibility isn't free.
Yeah.
It creates a debt that performance must constantly repay. You get stuck on this treadmill, always needing to prove the image is real, always performing to meet the expectations you created.
Whereas silence.
Silence offers freedom. It creates space to move freely without owing anyone a show. You're not chained to upholding some public image or justifying every move.
And this isn't just abstract political maneuvering, it's deep psychology. The reading says this isn't just theory, it's psychology.
Yeah, think about it from the observer's perspective.
Mm.
People do not fear what they fully understand. Familiarity, well, it often breeds contempt, or at least it diminishes awe.
It's true.
They fear what they can't predict, what they don't fully grasp. When your actions are always on display, when your thoughts, your feelings are constantly revealed, you become predictable. You become explainable.
And once you're explainable, you're manageable. People feel like they've got your number.
Exactly. When people think they understand your motives, your patterns, your limits, you become controllable. You lose that strategic edge that comes from being, well, an unknown quantity.
Hmm.
But if you take the Machiavellian path, stay quiet, calculating, and calm, you force others into guesswork. They don't have your playbook. And in that very act of trying to figure you out, speculating about your next move, they reveal more about themselves than you ever do. You gain intel just by holding back.
I can just picture Machiavelli watching our world of, performative success and constant updates, just shaking his head, not because he's against ambition, but because he sees how easily it's undermined by premature exposure.
And his view on commitment is really relevant here. Remember that quote? The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. The point isn't to glorify breaking promises.
Right. It's about reality.
It's acknowledging that circumstances change. What was necessary strategy then might be a liability now.
And if you made those past promises or declarations publicly, they become like chains.
Exactly. Public declarations trap you in old versions of yourself. If you loudly committed to path A and now path B is clearly better, deviating looks like weakness or inconsistency just because everyone expects you to stick to path A.
But silence. Silence lets you break those chains.
It does. Silence, however, is freedom. It is your right to pivot, to evolve, to adapt without apology because you haven't publicly welded yourself to one position. Machiavelli knew that those who master power master restraint, not just in deeds, but crucially, in words.
Like the warrior analogy. One guy enters the ring, shouting about how great he is, explaining his style.
While the other enters silently, observes, reveals nothing.
Which one is scarier?
The material asks that, and the answer is always the silent one. We don't fear the loud, we fear the unknown. The loud guy's bluster might be intimidating for a second, but his predictability is his downfall. The silent warrior's mystery. That's his weapon. That's the lesson for us today.
Because when you do show off your money, your body, your relationship, your big plans, you might think you're winning, intimidating people, maybe.
But the reality, the reading argues, is you're just revealing targets. You're pointing out exactly where others can aim their envy, their competition, their sabotage. You're inviting resistance. And maybe worst of all, by chasing that external validation, you're training yourself to need it.
And needing that validation, that's the deepest weakness.
It loops back to another famous Machiavellian line. It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking. And the interpretation here is key. True fear, the kind that commands respect and makes people pause, comes from distance, mystery, not bravado.
Bravado is just noise.
Yeah.
Covering insecurity.
Exactly. The constant need to be admired, chasing likes, seeking applause. It's described as the seed of self-destruction. Why? Because if your self-worth is tied to what others see and approve of, you become a slave to their perception.
And that pulls you away from actually being effective.
Right. You start shaping your actions to get applause, not to achieve the best outcomes. You prioritize optics, not outcomes. And when looking good becomes more important than doing good work, well, power slips away.
Okay, so if showing off is strategic suicide, what's the Machiavellian alternative path?
The path is laid out pretty clearly. Become unreadable. Move in silence. Execute without announcement. Use words sparingly. Fear only when words add weight. And fundamentally, let results, not declarations, speak.
And we need to be clear, this isn't about being timid or hiding away.
Not at all. It's about deep control. Control over your narrative, control over your opponent's understanding, control over your destiny. Machiavelli wasn't telling princes to lock themselves away. He was teaching them to reveal only what served their ends. To understand that real influence, it's not about being seen. It's about being felt quietly, powerfully, unforgettably.
So the next time you get that itch, that urge to post, announce, prove something.
Pause. Just pause and ask that critical question.
Yeah.
Who benefits from this display? You were the ones now preparing to use it against you. It's a stark filter. Think about those powerful, unseen forces in nature. Gravity, time, pressure, they shape mountains without sound. The advice is direct. Be like them. Be still. Be sharp. Be silent.
Because speaking before you act, you give adversaries time to prepare. You give rivals something to study. You literally become a map for them. Visible, traceable, predictable.
And the punchline, the core consequence, is unavoidable. Once you are predictable, you are no longer powerful, you are manageable. They know how to handle you because you showed them how.
Machiavelli's writings, then, they weren't just political manuals. They were psychological blueprints. He understood that power starts not with dominating others, but with controlling yourself.
That's the foundation. Not with domination, but with control.
Yeah.
Specifically, not of others, but of yourself.
And the critical skill within that?
Knowing when to withhold.
So why do people constantly show off? The material suggests it's often about seeking certainty, craving admiration, needing proof that they are worth something. They're looking outside for validation they lack inside.
But the Machiavellian mind, the one truly focused on gaining and keeping power, it doesn't seek validation, it seeks leverage. And almost nothing gives you more leverage than controlled silence.
And again, this isn't passive silence, not fear.
No, it's emphasized as chosen silence, controlled, calculated, dangerous.
Look at the pattern across history, even today. The higher someone rises, the less they speak. Think about it. The more weight their words carry, the less often those words are used.
True.
And when they do speak, the words land with force, not just because of their title, but because of what was held back. All the things they didn't say lend weight to what they do say.
It's like the beginner versus the master. The beginner explains everything.
The master explains nothing because he doesn't need to. His actions, his position speak for themselves.
It reinforces that idea. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. The power is in the person, often built through that quiet restraint.
Restraint in words, yes, but also restraint in behavior, in expression, in emotional reaction.
Think about the person who shows off constantly. They're often easy to provoke, right?
Right.
They rise to bait, take criticism personally,
Yeah.
react loudly and visibly, and in doing so, they give others exactly what they need to tear them down. Compare that to the Machiavellian operator. He doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't try to win the argument in the moment. Why? Because he's not playing for applause. He's playing for position. The strategic outcome is all that counts.
Think about influential people you know or have observed. Are they the loudest ones? Or are they often the ones whose silence makes people a bit uneasy? Because you just can't quite read them.
That's the power of what the material calls strategic invisibility. If you're loud and predictable, people track you easily. They feel they understand you. But when you're quiet, people imagine you.
And imagination, that's a powerful amplifier.
Absolutely. What they imagine is almost always more powerful than what is real. Visibility locks you into reality. Imagination lets others project onto you their fears, their hopes, often magnifying your perceived power. It's why rulers historically used mystery, limited access. Once you are common, you are no longer compelling.
And yet, modern culture pushes us to violate this constantly. We willingly leak our own weaknesses for attention, reward overexposure, mistake privacy for guilt, and subtlety for absence.
And the reading suggests this is a core reason many struggle for genuine respect or lasting influence. They haven't grasped the value of mystery. Machiavelli's point, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, means perception often trumps reality. What they see matters more than what you do.
So if you show the whole messy process, the effort, the hesitation, the frustration, you can actually diminish the finished result in their eyes.
It's like the magician again. The magician who explains his trick loses his audience. The magic was in the not knowing. Revealing the wires and mirrors breaks the spell.
And broadcasting achievements, trying to hype them up with words, it doesn't make them louder, it makes them speak softer.
Every word used to justify yourself weakens the impact. Every detail revealed gives critics something to dissect. Every boast shifts attention from your results to your ego, making it seem like you need validation, not that you simply achieved something.
The disciplined person, the Machiavellian thinker, doesn't announce his victories, he multiplies them in silence. He lets others interpret, speculate, wonder.
And in that wondering, respect grows. The more they wonder, the more they respect, and the more they respect, the more power he holds without ever needing to demand it. It's not about being invisible. It's about being intensely strategic in how you are seen. Choose those moments of visibility. Make them rare, deliberate, and loaded with intent.
Like that lion's roar again, not constant noise, held back, then bam, maximum impact.
And what's really insidious about the constant need to show off
Yeah.
is how it changes you. Slowly, you start to perform instead of act. You begin chasing applause instead of result. Your focus shifts from the actual work to managing the perception of the work. You even start dressing or acting for reaction instead of purpose.
And the end result. You risk becoming a caricature of what once made you dangerous. It's the trap of the showman. The moment he gets addicted to the audience, he becomes their slave.
Machiavelli's advice, as interpreted here, would be something like, don't play to the crowd, play above them. Let them talk, let them wonder, but never let them fully see.
Why not let them fully see?
Because when you are seen too clearly, too completely, you are no longer respected. In the same way, you become measured, compared, diminished.
You lose the mystique.
Exactly. And the material stresses this. Mystique is the shadow of real power. Lose the mystique, and you lose your edge.
So how do you build it? The advice includes things like remove the need to prove, replace display with discipline, act without explaining, win without celebrating, say less but mean more.
And by doing that, you subtly change the whole dynamic. You force the world to come to you, not by shouting, but because they noticed what wasn't being said, what wasn't on display. This is the essence of that quiet war. Machiavelli outlined a war, not for noise, but for control, not for fame, but for influence.
And today, in our age, where everyone is told, pressured even, to speak, where the noise level is deafening, those who master silence become gods among noise.
The truly strong person isn't the one demanding attention. They are the one who doesn't need it. And the greatest advantage in this noisy world, the ability to remain silent and let others expose themselves.
Because in this complex court of power, whether it's politics, work, social life, every boast, every overshare, every impulsive justification is a reveal of underlying weakness, insecurity, lack.
Machiavelli saw this play out again and again. In The Fall of Princes, the betrayal of allies, the missteps of those who mistook attention for strength. They truly thought performance was persuasion, that noise was dominance. But they were consistently outmaneuvered by men who said less, watched more, and moved only when the moment served them.
To really get this, you have to challenge a core modern belief. You must first kill the illusion that being understood is always valuable.
It's fascinating, right, that being fully understood can actually be detrimental in the game of power. The moment people fully understand you is the moment they stop fearing you, they stop respecting you, they start calculating how to surpass you. Machiavelli wasn't writing a guide to popularity. He wrote for those who wanted to last. And to last, you need to be somewhat ungraspable.
He even pointed to great historical figures, suggesting we imitate them, and a common thread. They knew the value of concealment.
Think about Caesar crossing the Rubicon, a world-changing move made in silence. Caesar Borgia, who Machiavelli watched closely, made no big declarations until his enemies were already cornered, unable to react. Even Machiavelli himself, burying lessons in allegory and the prince, wasn't giving loud, simple instructions.
History seems to punish those who reveal too much, and the reading argues, never more so than today.
Why? Because surveillance isn't just top-down anymore. It's social. It's self-inflicted. People freely volunteer their secrets, post vulnerabilities, document every win, every loss, every passing emotion. And they think this somehow gives them power, builds community.
But it doesn't give them power. It gives power to others to watch, to compare, to judge, to attack. Once it's out there, you cannot control what you've already released. It's ammunition for anyone.
Machiavelli would say, build fortresses of the mind. Create internal spaces where your true intentions are known only to you, where ambitions are not shared, they are executed, where the process stays invisible until the product is undeniable.
Those who build in silence build stronger. Makes sense. Architects don't show unfinished blueprints. Generals don't tweet battle plans. Effective leaders don't pull the public on every strategic choice.
The principle is constant. In the game of power, anticipation is more valuable than exposure. The unknown is leverage. A silent room holds more tension than a loud one. The unsaid shapes behavior more than any speech. control the information flow, control the perception.
This is where most people slip up. They feel tension, uncertainty, and they rush to relieve it by speaking, feel doubt, speak to cover it, feel triumph. Gotta scream it from the rooftops.
And by doing that, they're actively teaching the world how to read him. They're giving away the code to their own mind and strategy. But the dangerous man, the strategist, he resists that urge. He learns to hold, to sit in discomfort, to resist applause. He learns to speak only when silence no longer serves his larger goals.
And this isn't passive silence, not submission. It's the silence of control.
Yes, crucial distinction. Being merely quiet is passive. Being unwritable is active. A man who is unwritable is active. He's not just quiet. He is deliberately shaping perception by withholding just enough to make people wonder.
And that wondering, that's where the power lies.
Absolutely. That uncertainty makes people fill in the blanks with their own fears, their own hopes, their own insecurities. You become a kind of mirror, reflecting their projections, often distorting their judgment in your favor. Look at powerful figures who mastered this. Churchill words like thunder because they were rare. Marcus Aurelius writing for himself. Effective modern leaders listening more than speaking. They're strategic players. Machiavelli saw through the illusion of surface charisma. He knew a strong mind, concealed, composed, unwritable, that is unbreakable.
So the question for us today in this performative world is, what happens when you just don't perform? When you refuse to constantly explain, decline to show the whole process, stop advertising every move?
The material suggests the gains are fundamental. You gain space, you gain clarity, you gain control. Others stop talking to you about your plans and begin to talk about you instead of to you. They speculate, they react, they project.
And while they're busy doing that, you move quietly with force without needing permission or seeking validation from them.
And that, the reading argues, is how lasting influence is built. That is how empires are built, not with noise, but with moves that cannot be anticipated. Not with validation, but with vision that is not diluted by the crowd's gaze.
Machiavelli's core instruction, then, is almost: to rule without resistance, you must first remove the need to be seen constantly in everything you do.
Let the crowd chase attention, overexpose, burn themselves in the spotlight. You stay in the shadows. Not hiding like a coward, but being the architect of a power they will only recognize once it's too late. And they won't know how you got there, because you never showed your hand. You didn't shout, didn't posture, didn't fight for their fleeting attention. You just move. It's like, in nature, the loudest animal is rarely the deadliest. The wolf, the snake, the storm. They don't send out press releases. Machiavelli saw that quiet truth.
The truth is stark, isn't it? But so hard to practice. Silence used strategically is more lethal than any speech. And its opposite, all that display, boasting, theatrical self-exposure, is presented as a fatal flaw.
And yet, we swim in this theater of exposure. Status updates, personal slogans, life vlogs, curated brands, performances everywhere.
But the core misunderstanding is huge. Performance is not power. In fact, it is often the substitute for it. It's the flashy cover for a lack of substance.
Those with real power, Machiavelli saw, have no need to prove it. The second you feel the need to prove something, you implicitly admit that it's in question. Why is showing off the worst move? It invites reaction, tells the world where to aim, exposes your position before you've secured the ground. It's just strategic malpractice.
Think about the wise man versus the fool contrast. The fool reveals himself, demands to be seen, insists on being recognized, and basically hands his enemies the very information they need to destroy him.
While the wise man acts quietly, precisely, and only later, if ever, does the world learn what he has done. He worked below the radar, building, securing. And again, this isn't timidness. It's the silence of supremacy, a silence so solid that it cannot be rattled by opinion, trend, or insult. The show-off. He's already lost the game because he fundamentally misunderstands power. He's traded real inward power, self-control, strategy, discipline, into outward validation, which is easily taken away or manipulated.
And showing off traps you, too. It puts you on a schedule that does not serve you. You end up acting or revealing when people are watching, not when it's the right strategic moment. You stop operating based on real strategy and start performing for response.
And the most dangerous part of that, you begin to confuse reaction with result, mistaking likes for actual progress. So many great plans die, not from opposition, but from premature attention. The idea shared too early, the strategy leaked for praise. In Machiavelli's world, this premature commitment was often a death sentence.
We often associate confidence with being loud, assertive, but Machiavelli flips that. True confidence is silent. It doesn't need to shout. It moves with such precision. It doesn't ask for trust. It demands respect.
Consider leadership styles. The loud boss, always explaining, justifying, seems accessible, maybe, but often lacks real authority. The quiet leader listens more, withholds more, commands a different kind of respect. Their words weigh more because he speaks less, and that's not coincidence, that's design. It applies broadly. Silence increases perceived value. Every unnecessary word dilutes that value. Explain yourself constantly, you lower your price. Withhold strategically, you raise it.
Like in a negotiation. First to speak often loses ground. Reveal too much, you concede too much. Hold your silence, let them fill the void. They often reveal their weaknesses while trying to guess yours.
Machiavelli wasn't just teaching politics. He was teaching human nature. He knew people are deeply uncomfortable with what they don't understand. That discomfort makes them talk, react, show their hand, just trying to figure things out. The Machiavellian advantage, almost laughably simple sometimes. All you need to do is remain still, and they will destroy themselves in the effort to decode you.
So that impulse to post, brag, reveal, really pause and ask, who are you doing it for? Is it for progress or for praise? Is it for control or for comfort?
Because the hard truth is, the man who needs to be seen will always be controlled by the gaze of others. But the man who learns to see everything while revealing nothing essential about himself, he becomes untouchable. This kind of silence, this Machiavellian discipline, it's rare. It demands immunity to needing external reactions, finding power not in being known, but in being strategically unknowable. The unknown is feared, the predictable is managed. Machiavelli forces a choice. Choose who you want to be. Power isn't just what you do, it's what you allow others to think you might do. If they're unsure, they hesitate. And that hesitation is the space in which you win.
It's a potent image. Not the showman taking the stage, but the shadow figure. The one who appears only after the decisive move, who is 10 steps ahead but says nothing until it's over.
The instruction isn't to be totally invisible, but intensely deliberate. Make them think checkers while you're playing chess. Maintain composure, gather intel, move quietly. Speak only when your silence has finished its work. That's the power of not showing off. The power of presence without performance, the core instruction. Say nothing, watch everything, and move only when it serves the wind.
Look back at falls from power, lost influence. There's often that common thread. They were seen too clearly, too early by too many.
Machiavelli saw power like gold. It loses value when too much is in circulation. The person constantly broadcasting themselves floods the market with himself. And once you're everywhere, commonplace. You're no longer valuable, just common background noise. You can't be both revered and overly familiar. His advice to rulers about learning how not to be good subtly included how not to be accessible. A sovereign's authority rests on results and a certain misspeak, not constant explanation, felt, not just followed, presence weighing even when absent, built by speaking less, making appearances count.
So when you chase visibility, you surrender the one irreplaceable thing, mystique.
And mystique isn't just hiding, it's the product of restraint, of discipline, of showing only what serves your objective and nothing more. It's power preserved through precision. Think of great actors using silence, a glance, a pause, to say more than a speech. It's the same in life. The person who speaks after a silence controls the tempo. The one who holds back gains leverage.
In the Machiavellian view, every interaction is a subtle contest of control. Noise, emotion, the desire to be liked. These are liabilities.
And the worst liability, that desire to be admired. It leads straight to performance addiction, a massive distraction from power. The person who rises silently is more effective, more dangerous. Nobody sees him coming. He's the silent architect. Studies opponents while they advertise themselves. Waits. Then strikes with the precision people call genius.
But it wasn't innate genius. It was patience, silence, control.
And that quiet effectiveness terrifies people. You can't prepare for the unpredictable, resist the unseen, retaliate against a force you don't understand. That's the psychology of fear Machiavelli mastered.
Revisiting, safer to be feared than loved. Love is given, fear is crafted. And a key ingredient, uncertainty.
Uncertainty makes people cautious, unsure of your next move. They tread carefully, unsure how you think. They hesitate to challenge, sense power behind the silence. They respect the distance. It's a paradox of modern communication. The more we share, the less strategically respected we might become. Sharing feels good, honest. But power isn't about feeling good, it's about lasting.
So the training is hold when others release, conceal when others confess, act when others announce. Understand not every truth needs an audience.
And critically, distinguish transparency from weakness, Machiavelli would insist. Show only what is useful. Disclose only what builds your position. Never confuse openness with strength in a strategic sense. While you broadcast your plan seeking validation, someone else is watching, calculating how to use your truth against you. They'll wait, smile, then move when your guard is down while you're busy counting likes. Real power. Never loud, never rushed, never needy.
Which brings us to that crucial final question you have to ask yourself. Do you want recognition or do you want results? Because you can rarely have both long term.
Chasing early recognition makes you a symbol. Symbols are targets. Building loudly invites sabotage. Needing applause compromises tactics. But the person content to go unseen, unpraised, they become something else, a shadow that moves behind the headlines, a force that does not depend on exposure to dominate. Machiavelli didn't crave fame. He understood it, manipulated it, but never saw it as the goal. It's a trap. It forces you to maintain the image others admire, even if it costs you what made you powerful. The world screams. Be visible, loud, undeniable. The strategist knows. More seen, more scrutinized, easier to dismantle. Be careful what you reveal, what you show off. The person addicted to display may win the crowd, but he will never control the game. Machiavelli wrote for the player, the strategist, his deepest truth. Power is not what people see. Power is what people can't see and fear. The powerful individual isn't defined by loudness, but careful listening. Not by revealing, but withholding. Not by applause, but unseen moves. Those who lasted, who ruled, planned in silence, shadows, without needing recognition. They needed effectiveness. And effectiveness often ends where the need for attention begins, showing off. A fundamental misunderstanding of power. The crowd cheers the shine. The one who endures understands visibility's price.
And that price, exposure, vulnerability, predictability, debts a Machiavellian mind avoids at all costs. In our modern world of constant sharing, most people live wide open. But exposure isn't strength, it's surrender. You show goals, get mocked, reveal process, get stolen, flaunt wealth, get schemed against. Every reveal invites judgment, envy, resistance.
But stay quiet, unreadable. You hold the advantage. Can't attack the undefined. Can't block the unseen move. Can't destroy the hidden. That is not weakness, that is design, the world says. Be transparent, Machiavelli. Be selective, world. Be authentic by oversharing, Machiavelli. Be strategic, world. Be admired, Machiavelli. Be feared when necessary, always respected.
And that deep respect, not from loud displays, but from consistency, restraint, and force used only when it serves a purpose. From quiet capability, not noisy demands.
Think about it. Invisibility isn't the enemy. Indifference is. No one ignores what they don't understand, what they can't predict. But they easily dismiss the familiar, the overexposed. So let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them think they have you figured out based on carefully chosen glimpses, while you quietly redefine who you are, where you're going, and what you'll become. Remember Machiavelli on The Prince appearing virtuous. Perception is a tool. You don't owe the world the full raw you. You owe the world results. And real results. Results do not need decoration, do not need explanation. They speak louder than your mouth ever could. That's the lesson for building anything that lasts. Move in silence, build in silence, win in silence. And when you do speak, make it rare, intentional, heavy with the weight of what you withheld. Power isn't volume, it's scarcity.
The person chasing the spotlight might impress a room today. But the person who gets Machiavelli's quiet wisdom, who masters strategic silence, they will shape the world. Legacy isn't noise, it's motion. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable because it wasn't seen coming. Think of the great rulers. Crowned by ability, often ruling unseen, making decisions without constant explanation, not by fame or applause. They needed effectiveness. And effectiveness often starts where the need for attention stops.
So maybe the final thought is this. Step back from the spotlight. Actively withdraw that need to prove yourself. Master your tongue, temper your pride. Focus your mind on impact, not impression.
When your silence is louder than their noise, you've won. When your actions echo through rooms you never entered, you've won. When they finally realize they've been playing your game without ever hearing your rules, you've won. That perhaps is the final rule. That's the quiet victory.